Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So here's another deck profile update for you guys. This time it's an update on my Counter Fairy deck post January 2020 ban list. So Solemn Warning is now back at 3 to my surprise, and honestly that's actually really good for this deck because now you can actually work around your ratios a little bit better. Now some things were hit on the ban list, nothing that really affects this deck to a degree, but in a way it does kind of let me make some room for other cards that I wanted to try out in this deck. So I went back, kind of cut down on a few things, and added a few new things. So that's what I just wanted to show you guys this time around. Alright, so starting off with the main deck, still 40 cards. I'm playing 3 copies of Bountiful Artemis. So this is pretty standard for the Counter Fairy strategy because, anytime you activate a counter trap and it resolves, this card allows you to draw a card and it's not once per turn and it doesn't necessarily start a chain, so it's just upon the resolution. So if you happen to have all 3, that's 3 free cards for you to draw. Next, 3 Guiding Ariande. So this card is really amazing, especially for its pendulum effect. So basically, the way this card works is that as long as it's on your pendulum zone, you never have to pay costs for your counter traps, whether it's to discard cards or pay your life points. So you definitely need to try to get this card in your hand as quickly as you can. And if you already hard open this, oh great, you're in a good spot. And if it's popped by any means, you can reveal 3 counter traps and your opponent chooses 1 to add to your hand and the rest go back to the deck. So it's Pantheism of Monarchs too, which also, funny enough, is not once per turn. Next, 2 copies of Sacred Arc Aeronite Parshath. So this card is fairly easy to bring out. It has 2 ways to summon it. You can use the counter trap to bring it out, or you can just use it by its effect, but I usually prefer to bring it out by the effect of the counter trap. But generally, it just does piercing damage, and yeah, it's just a really powerful card overall. You can banish. So when this card inflicts battle damage, you can add any Parshath card from your deck to your hand, or a counter trap from your deck to your hand. So this card searches out anything. So as long as it's Parshath or a counter trap, so that's actually pretty nice. And again, the fact that he does piercing damage, it's also an added bonus. 2 copies of Minerva. So this card already acts as a boss monster in and itself. So anytime you activate a counter trap and it resolves, you essentially get to give this card 500 attack points. So yeah, it's really nice. Now, if Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can add 1 counter trap from your grave of a different name back to your hand, so it's also good for recursion. And even though I'm not running the field spell anymore, we do have a card that counts as Sanctuary in the Sky too, so that's really good. Only 1 copy of Power Angel Valkyria. This searches out any light fairy monster anytime you negate a spell, trap, or monster effect. 1 Matil's Sage of the Sky. So each time a counter trap is activated, immediately after it resolves, you gain 1,000 life points. And if you do, if the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So again, we do have a card that counts as Sanctuary in the Sky too, so it's pretty nice. And the fact that you can regain your life points even if you don't have Guiding Ariande, that's still pretty good. Now, just as a little funny gimmicky card, I'm running Barrier Statue of the Heavens just to prevent your opponent from special summoning anything except light monsters, and a lot of decks are still dark decks, so Barrier Statue is still a pretty nice tech to run. And I'm still sticking to 3 Honest just because, these fairy monsters don't necessarily beat over monsters very well, so you do need Honest just to kind of give them the power boost they need. Now, luckily enough, I do have another card that works pretty well with this deck, so we'll get to that momentarily. But that's pretty much it for the monster lineups. I cut down my monsters by 2, and it just makes it a little bit better. Alright, so with spells, I'm running 3 copies of the Sanctum of Parshath. This card does count as Sanctuary in the Sky, so it gives your fairy monsters 300 extra attack and defense points. And at the added bonus, set spells and traps you control cannot be destroyed or be targeted by your opponent's card effects, so it's really good. So definitely a good card to try to run. And also, once per turn, you can target a total of 3 fairy monsters or counter traps with different names in your grave. Place them on top of your deck in any given order you want. Next, 3 copies of Pot of Duality. Now that Colossus is banned, I don't have to worry about trying to search out my cards anymore, so thank God for that. Even though I did like Colossus as a card, I did feel it was a little too oppressive. Sadly, I could have just went to 1, not be fully banned, but it is what it is, sadly. But anyway, Pot of Duality searches out, lets you excavate the top 3 cards, then lets you choose what card to add to your hand. The only restriction is that you can't special summon monsters the turn you activate this card, but that's perfectly fine. This deck doesn't really spam out a lot of monsters anyway, so no worries. I'm running 2 Pot of Desire. Since I'm running a lot of 3-Os in this deck, I'm never too worried about losing everything for good, and Pot of Desires is just a nice way to clear a quarter of my deck just so I can draw into the cards I do need. One Demise, since it is at 1 now. The reason I'm running this now is because like now it feels like this deck can actually play it a little bit better, and it's a good card to try to run, but you need to know when to properly time to use this card. So like if you have no monsters in hand, but a lot of spells and traps that you can still use, you can set whatever you need, play this card afterwards, just draw 3 cards, and then like if you happen to draw a monster that you can make use of, including Guiding Ariande, you can just like get yourself set from there. So card demise definitely comes in clutch when you really need it. I'm also playing 1 copy of Moonmere Shield. I was opting to play 2, but I feel like I can easily dig this card out with Pot of Duality, especially because I'm not running too many spells, and sometimes it's really nice to see opening hand too. So it's basically like a 4th copy of Honest. It all just makes it to where your monsters are always guaranteed to be 100 points stronger than your opponent. So definitely comes in handy. But again, I'm thinking about running this at 2. I'm just trying to figure out like what I should cut to play the second one. Alright, so that's it for the spells. Now we're moving on to the traps. And from here on out, it's just counter traps. Starting off with 3 copies of Judgment. Negates any summon as well as any spell and trap. So definitely the best card. And again, with the Guiding Ariande, you never have to pay life points. So it's completely free every time. Same with Solemn Strikes. Negates any inherent summon. And negates monster effects, so that's pretty good. Solemn Warning to negate any summon. And negates any spell, monster, or trap effect that includes the ability to summon. Alright, now that I can play this card a little bit more free too, I'm also running 3 copies of Divine Punishment. It's kind of a hybrid of Solemn Strike and Solemn Judgment. So whenever a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, while you control Sanctuary in the Sky, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And I'm also running 2 copies of Rebirth of Parshath. Same kind of deal as Divine Punishment, only difference is that this does not require Sanctuary in the Sky. You do have to, however, need to reveal a counter trap in your hand to discard, and then discard 1 card and pay 1,000 life points. Negate the activation of any spell, trap, or monster effect. Shuffle it back into the deck, and then you can special summon 1 Parshath monster from your deck or your extra deck. So it's a good way to bring out the Arc Aeronite Parshath. And sometimes if I don't have Sanctuary in the Sky, but mainly Sanctum of Parshath, I usually just set this, hold on to this card, reveal it, and then so on and so on. So like, it just depends on like how you properly use it. Alright, so for the extra deck, the extra deck is just kind of like self-explanatory. This deck doesn't really rely too heavily on it, but it does come up every now and then. So let's just start off with the Link monsters, running Hippo Shinnigan, since this is a light deck, so pretty good. Cyphering Lord Lambda, also light, but generally this is just a generic Link 2. Barricade Board Blocker comes up every now and then, especially to protect my face-up spells like the Sanctum of Parshath, because people will try to get rid of that, so Barricade Board Blocker will definitely help out. Running 1 of each of the Nightmares, Nightmares, Cerberus, Phoenix, and Unicorn. And for my Link 4s, I'm running Borlo Dragon and Boral Sword Dragon. These rarely come up, but when they do, they do, Like I said, I don't rely too heavily on the extra deck unless I absolutely have to. Alright, now I'm running these as Super Poly targets since I do side out Super Polymerization. 1 Starving Venom, 1 Dragostapelia, Trifeo Viridum, so it definitely works against mainly for the Subterror matchup, Mud Dragon of the Swamp, since everything is Earth in their deck, but they're all different types. 1 Violet Chimera for the Salad matchups, and for these last 2 cards, they're actually waking the dragon targets. I'm running Neteria Exterio, just negate any spell and trap, and also Ultimate Falcon because it's immune to card effects, and it's really good against the Spiral matchup, so like Spirals can't necessarily out this for some reason, so yeah, definitely an amazing card. Heroes can out it because they could easily buff up their hero monsters with Honest Neos or with Dread Decimator, so like they're the only deck that can actually beat over it. Alright, so now moving on to the side deck. I really had a hard time figuring out like what I wanted to play in the side deck, but I kind of like this option. So running 3 copies of DD Crow, 3 Lancia. I might switch out DD Crow for Nibiru, but I'm still deciding on it just because, like I said, these fairy monsters don't necessarily attack over big monsters very well, so if your opponent's token is too big, that can be a bit of a problem. 3 Super Poly, pretty obvious. Waking the Dragon, if I set that and if I don't have access to that Sanctum of Parshath, it's just a good way to punish the opponent. And as a side tech, I'm actually running this card for fun, Grand Horn of Heaven. So basically, like if I'm up against a deck that relies too heavily on its extra deck, I always like to spring this on them. They get to draw one card, yeah, but they lose their main phase, and they're forced to switch into their battle phase. And if they go from battle phase to main phase 2 right away and try again, spring another one, their turn immediately comes to an end. I used to play this a lot in Trick Stars, so I figured this deck could definitely make use of it. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will catch you guys again next time.